Hi everyone, I'm Liam Eagle. I'm the editor here at the Web Host Industry Review, and I'd like to welcome you all to another one of our webinars. Today's session is called Learn How 1,000 Plus Cloud and Service Providers Are Making Money with Veeam Software. It's going to feature a presentation by Veeam's VP of Product Strategy and Chief Evangelist, Doug Hazelman. And I'll let Doug introduce himself properly in just a moment. But before I do, a couple of housekeeping items regarding questions. We're going to save a few minutes at the end for a Q&A period, sort of a public Q&A period. But you can feel free to submit your questions throughout the session using the webinar control panel function. And Rick Vanover from Veeam is also on the call, and he'll actually be answering those questions privately via the same function during the webinar, and we may address some of those questions in a more sort of public forum during the Q&A period at the end. Secondly, with regard to slides, if you're looking to get a copy of the slides from the session after the fact, there will be some contact info for Veeam on screen a little later on, and you can certainly reach out to them directly. As always, there will be an archived video of the webinar, which of course will include the slides, online as of early next week at theword.com/webinars, and that will be there alongside a lot of our other great past webinars. So without any further ado, I will turn things over to Doug, and he can introduce himself a little more thoroughly.
Great. Thank you, Liam. Let me get my, there we go. So, yes, thanks, Liam. I am Doug Hazelman. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy and Chief Evangelist here at Veeam Software. What we're going to go over today is our Pro Partner Service Provider Program, and really, how as a Pro Partner, it can help to drive revenue for our service providers and our service provider community. So as we start off here, our agenda, we'll talk about unlocking the revenue potential with really two of our products, our Veeam Backup and Replication, which is what we're most well known for. And then also talk about some opportunities with our Veeam NWorks products. I'll then do an overview of our service provider program to give you some more information on that if you're not already involved in that. Talk a little bit about licensing, and then, of course, Q&A at the end. Again, if you do have questions during the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A panel. We do have Rick Vanover handling the Q&A live as I go through this. So how do you unlock the revenue potential and earn more money with Veeam Backup and Replication? So I'm going to go through a very simplified diagram here. We've got our production environment, and then, of course, Veeam Backup and Replication is both backup and replication. So you can, there's a number of different offerings that you can have for your customers. You can, offer to give them a nice, backup of their data. You can do that either daily or hourly or however often you like. You can also offer disaster recovery services through the replication capabilities. So if your customers are concerned that, there may be an issue or, they want their data on two different sites, then again, you can utilize the replication features. And when we talk about, earning more money, one of the value adds that you can offer customers with Veeam Backup and Replication on the backup side is the idea of instant VM recovery. So you can offer really a premium offering around, 5-minute recovery time objectives. So, if something happens to their virtual machine, to their server, you can say, well, if you want to sign up for a little bit of extra, we can give you a 5-minute RTO and have that server back online in 5 minutes or less. Now, of course, how does that work? So Veeam Backup and Replication, starting with version 5, we introduced technology we like to call vPower. It's really a breakthrough technology. What it allows us to do is from the backups that we create, we can actually publish that backup as a regular VMDK, a regular virtual machine file set. Even though it's stored on disk as compressed and deduplicated and incremental, we can still present it up to the virtual infrastructure and make it appear as if it's the normal virtual machine. And we do this without having to extract it. So that means you can now run the virtual machine directly from the backup file. You don't need any special storage in order to do this. And when it's running in this mode, it doesn't make any changes to the backup file. Some of the other features that we've also have around vPower is the idea of an isolated virtual lab. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that here in a few minutes. but it allows you to run your customers' production workloads right along, run your customers' virtual machines right alongside their production virtual machines to be able to give them access, or even you access, to go over and do things like individual application item recovery, do different test scenarios and things like that. So what is this instant restore technology and that 5-minute RTO I talked about at the beginning? We like to talk about it as kind of a spare tire approach. As we all know, in the trunk of the car, you've got a spare tire. Unfortunately, that spare is usually not the same size as your normal tires or wheels on your car. The design of the spare tire is really to be able to put it on and get you moving, but really just get you moving to the next service station so that you can then stop and make it and change it out to your normal production tire, production wheels. With Instant VM Recovery, we give you that same capability by being able to run the virtual machine from the backup file without extracting it. We can have that virtual machine back online in less than 5 minutes, and then using VMware technology such as storage vMotion or even our replication technology, you can actually get that customer back online to full production capability without having any additional downtime. So with storage vMotion, once the virtual machine is back online, it's running as a spare, right? So it's not full production capability, just like on the car, but storage vMotion, you can actually put that back onto a production data store and have the customer performance back to full production capability without any additional downtime. I like to think of it as changing the spare as you're driving down the road. So, talk briefly in regards to our vPower functionality and some of the other capabilities. The Instant VM Recovery is the idea of running the virtual machine from the backup file in your production environment. But yet there's even more capabilities than that, and one of those is what we call UAIR, as well as Instant File Level Recovery. UAIR stands for Universal Application Item Recovery. So if your customer has data on that virtual machine that they want to retrieve, like individual application items or individual files, you can offer a service to say, you know what, we'll be able to give you that data back without having to do, individual application item backups, everything from an image level backup. And then also, additional peace of mind and additional value offering that you can give to your customers is what we call our sure backup or recovery verification, meaning as you're backing up your customer's virtual machines, once that backup is complete, you can then take that backup, that virtual machine backup, through a complete boot sequence to verify its recoverability. And you can automate this in the background, and once it's complete, generate a report that you can then send to your customer. So not only are you offering peace of mind that the backups are being completed on an agreed-upon basis, you can also offer them the additional feature of, we're going to test every backup that we create for you, and we'll generate you a report to say that, yes, this is a good recovery point, and if you ever need to recover from this particular backup, you'll be able to. And then finally, from a replication standpoint, there's really a couple of different tiers that you can offer. One of those is what we call near continuous data protection. So you can actually replicate your customer's virtual machine on site, but maybe to a different data store, to a different host, even to a different vCenter, to offer what we call near continuous data protection. So you could be replicating that virtual machine or a number of virtual machines at 10 to 5 minute intervals, and in the event that something within your infrastructure goes down, you lose a data store, you lose a host or a cluster or something like that, you can say, well, guess what? We've got a copy over here that, Mr. Customer, you can run, and we've only lost 5 minutes of data or 10 minutes of data, depends on how often you replicate. But that's what we call our smart CDP and near continuous data protection. And then you can also offer that capability to say, look, Mr. Customer, we'll replicate your data to our other data center that's maybe on the other side of the state or on the other side of the country. You can offer that replication capability so in the event of a natural disaster, you'll be able to say that that customer data is protected very easily. So one of the things that I mentioned is part of the vPower technology, and what enables the universal application item recovery as well as the recovery verification is this idea of an on-demand sandbox or a virtual lab. What this allows you to do is once the virtual machines are backed up, you can start those virtual machines up in this sandbox or isolated environment. So they're running right alongside the production virtual machines. And you can do this from any of the restore points you have available on disk, and it's running from the backup, but the contents of the backup file remain untouched. So things you can use this for, or offerings that you can give to your customers, is if they want to do some troubleshooting, if they want to test patches or workarounds, or even use it as a development or test lab, this is an additional offering that you can give to your customers and say, hey, we can spin up your application environment in the sandbox and give you access to it. They can go in and do whatever they want. It's not going to affect their production virtual machines. And we like to say it helps you as a service provider leverage the investment that you've made in Veeam and leverage your customer's investment to be able to put their backups to work. So no longer is it just a peace of mind that you sell to the customer saying, yes, we're backing up your virtual machines. You can also have an offering that says, we'll give you access to this virtual lab idea, for an extra fee, and then when you send a request, we'll go ahead and spin it up for you, and you have access to this sandbox environment. From a centralization standpoint, in regards to how backup and replication works, you can set it up in many different ways. And we're also getting ready to release our version 6 product as well. But if you look at what we have today with version 5, we do have centralized management. So if you have multiple backup servers, maybe you have a backup server dedicated per customer, or you have backup servers dedicated per clusters, the centralized management web interface gives you as a service provider an overall view of the entire infrastructure and how things are going. So this is where if a customer calls up, you can also have one of your help desk operators go in and search for the file to find the file and be able to recover that file for the customer without having to go through and extract the entire VMDK. Now, of course, we are getting ready to release our version 6, and from a service provider standpoint, I think version 6 is going to open up even more capabilities. We're still going to have our unique value proposition with vPower on the VMware side, but one of the new things that we're adding is support for Microsoft Hyper-V. So, if you do have a mixed VMware and Hyper-V environment, we'll be able to support those virtual machines on Hyper-V as well. We're also adding to the scalability of the product, so we're going to a proxy repository architecture. One of the benefits that I see here is if you want to offer a hosted disaster recovery site for customers. You may not be hosting their entire infrastructure, but you could actually offer to host their DR site and allow customers to replicate their environment into your environment. And part of that is going to help out is our advanced replication capabilities built into version 6 as well. It's much faster than it was before. It's much more friendly, so to speak, in regards to WAN bandwidth and WAN connections. And we also offer features such as being able to re-IP and reset the networks on the virtual machines in the DR site. A number of other enhancements, including what we call one-click file restore. So from the standpoint of being able to restore those individual files, your help desk will now be able to go in, find that file, and click recover, and it'll restore it right back to the customer's virtual machine, the original location, keeping all permissions and ownership intact. And a number of other features are What's New document will be coming out along with the release, and you'll be able to see just how many enhancements have been built into version 6. Part of that is what helped us win Best of VMworld in 2011. It's the second year in a row that Veeam Backup and Replication has won the Gold Award in New Technology. So again, it's award-winning software, and a number of service providers already utilize this technology as an offering for their customers today. If we look at the large-scale deployments, especially within a service provider, we're going to what we call a proxy repository architecture. So now you'll be able to manage a much larger environment with just one Veeam backup and replication server, and be able to remotely deploy, or actually automatically deploy proxy servers to handle the backup load across multiple clusters. As your environments grow and as you get more customers, you expand your environment, it's just as simple as adding additional proxies or repositories to handle that additional load. So with version 6, scalability is a big part of what we're doing to increase that. From a remote office, branch office, or in the case of a customer versus cloud perspective, there's two different methods that we can do. If everything is hosted at the remote site, we can have Veeam backup and replication handle everything within that site. But a more common scenario, I believe, is if you want to back up to the cloud, and again offer a backup to cloud service, you can have the proxy set up at the customer site and have that sending the backup data to a repository that you host. So that gives your customers peace of mind of having their backups off-site. So in the event of a physical disaster, their data is still at a different physical site and they're protected from that. So again, the proxy architecture, repository architecture is very key to those capabilities. But we do more than just backup. So from a managing your entire infrastructure standpoint, we do have our NWorks line. NWorks is an acquisition that Veeam made back in July of 2008. And with NWorks, we have both our management pack that plugs into Microsoft System Center Operations Manager, as well as our Smart Plugin, or SPY, that plugs into HP Operations Manager, formerly known as OpenView. So if you're using either one of those platforms from an operational standpoint, within your data center to manage your customer environments, then these two products, really do fit in well by being able to manage both, your physical and virtual in that single environment. So they're both focused on taking all of the VMware data from the hosts and the data generated by the virtual machines and data stores and networks and all that type of stuff, and putting it into these management frameworks. So it does help simplify your operations because now you can have centralized management. You don't have to deploy yet another monitoring framework just for VMware. You can maximize the investment you've already made on Microsoft or HP. It is 100% agentless, so there's no agents required to be installed on the hosts or on the virtual machines. So you don't have to worry about your customer saying, well, what's this agent in here doing? There is no Veeam agents on the virtual machines themselves. And again, from your IT perspective, your operations perspective, it gives that unified view, and it's not just another monitoring framework and another screen that your operations center has to keep track of. From the coexistence standpoint, again, if you are running a mixed environment and you offer hosting for both vSphere as well as Hyper-V, System Center is going to be a key component of that. With the Veeam NWorks management pack for VMware, we pull all that VMware data into System Center Operations Manager, the same thing that Microsoft's management pack for Hyper-V does for the Hyper-V environment. And we also, our management pack is pro-enabled, or performance and resource optimization. So you can actually use Microsoft System Center Virtual Machine Manager to automate some administration tasks based on the monitoring data that you get from our MP. So it's really monitoring, administration, and automation all through System Center. And it is complete integration. So when we take a look at it, and this is true for on the HP side as well, but because we're delivering the data natively into those systems in the format that they understand, you get all the functionality. So alerts, service maps, reporting, all those types of things are delivered in the native format for all the VMware components. Again, the vCenter server, the hosts themselves, cluster statistics, cluster data, virtual machine data, storage data, and even hardware data. So when we talk about hardware, servers today have a lot of sensors on them. Those sensors generate data, and we can actually collect that data through the VMware API and deliver that into either Microsoft System Center or HP Operations Manager. And it gives you a true app-to-metal view of your infrastructure. Taking a look at the Microsoft side, again, that visibility by being able to drill down all the way to the individual virtual machines. And then if you have deployed the System Center agent on those virtual machines and you have management pack, like a SQL management pack on there, you'll be able to see all the way down to that level. So this view shows from the data center all the way down to the individual databases and the health of those databases running on that virtual machine. So it is true app-to-metal visibility, and really does enable root cause analysis, because if you have an issue, maybe you lose the data store that virtual machine is running on, or maybe the database files are running on, you can instantly identify that the issue is a piece of your virtual infrastructure and not the application itself. And again, that does help for making sure that you do proper escalation. When you do have an issue, you can get the right teams involved in order to resolve that issue. So we've talked about all the technology. Now, how do you make money? So again, it's protecting all the virtual machines with a single solution. With version 6, if you're doing Hyper-V hosting as well as VMware, gives you that capability. Allows you to create tiered services. Again, specifically around backup, you can offer additional things like 5-minute RTOs, 5-minute RPOs in case of replication, the ability to use the virtual labs, recovery verification. So there's a lot of different areas where you can create additional services just around our backup product. But what's the program like, and how do you make money? So we've tried to create a program designed with service providers in mind. So our service provider program is separate from our Pro Partner program, but we do have similar levels in regards to basic, silver, and gold. And there's different criteria and requirements for each, but of course each one does have its own rewards as well. So you can decide what level of provider that you want to be, and take advantage of those rewards in regards to offering additional services to your customers. From a licensing perspective, we do offer a couple of different licensing modes. So if you can do perpetual licensing, so from the Veeam backup and replication standpoint, it's a per VM licensing model in what we call 10 virtual machine packs. So one SKU is 10 virtual machines. So if you want to protect 100 virtual machines, you would buy 10 packs of 10 VMs each. The other products, the NWorks products that I talked about, those are still licensed per socket, and that's on the physical host, physical VMware host that you wish to monitor with those products. We also offer retail and monthly licensing, so that, you can do that with no volume or time commitment, and it's available through a number of different aggregators to our Silver and Gold Pro Partner service provider program attendees. So success, if we take a look at, really just kind of one example here, there was a challenge that, be able to implement a hosted cloud SaaS recovery solution, and customers have quick, reliable, secure access to the data 24/7. I mean, that's what everyone's trying to do, right? So BitRefinery, they run in Veeam backup and replication to back up and safeguard the data, and their results were, decreasing the financial burden associated with disaster recovery, because if you look at our pricing compared to your traditional backup vendors, we're very competitive. You get improved uptime because the backup infrastructure is always there, and again, additional offering that instant access to backups of virtual machines in the cloud is something that's very important to customers. So for BitRefinery, there was never a question of which VMware backup to use. Veeam backup replication did exactly what we promised it would do. and it's very easy to use, unlike some of the competitors. So, that's just one example. You can view that as well as other success stories on our website at veeam.com. So, what are some of the ABCs of getting started with the Veeam Pro Partner Service Provider Program? A is apply. So go to our website, veeam.com. If you go to our partner, you click on partners, you'll see our PSP program. Go there and register. That'll get you started in the process. So you sign up, go to Pro Partner, click apply, and it'll walk you right through that application process. Once you've done that, buy or try the product. So you can download any of our products in an evaluation version, 30-day evaluation key, full functionality, so you can actually try them before you do it. And then the buy is order through the VAR or aggregator. And you also get access to evaluation licenses as well as NFR keys for our silver and gold tiers. And then it's create the offerings. So you really have the opportunity to create customized solutions, that you can offer to your customers, really kind of a menu, so to speak. So you can say, I can offer you, backup once a day. If that's all you care about, then that's how much it's going to cost. Or, I can back up your virtual machines once an hour and give you a recovery time of less than 5 minutes, and they can choose that option. So again, the pricing on how you want to do those services is really up to you. So, about 30 minutes in regards to the presentation. It's now time for Q&A. So please utilize the Q&A panel, and we'll try to get the questions answered as easily as we can.
Doug, would you mind if I asked a couple of questions that I came up with during the thing while we wait for some of the user questions to come in?
Sure.
Okay, so I guess one of the questions I had was, is the model that the backups are for existing VMs specifically? I mean, I've spoken to some people who I guess feel that there's or have seen through their own business that there's a real opportunity in sort of virtualized backups for production environments that are more based on dedicated hardware. Is that something that you guys see being a good use case for the technology, or is your model more based around backing up virtual machines?
I guess I don't quite understand the question.
I guess backup based on VMs for production environments that are based on VMs, is that the model that you're using, or are you seeing a use for cloud backup for dedicated gear?
Well, I think there's really is a couple of different offerings. There's the if you're hosting VMware virtual machines or soon Hyper-V virtual machines for customers, if that's your model, then you can back those up, offer backup as a service as one of your value-added services. I think another aspect, and I touched on it a little bit, is an additional offering in regards to what I call hosted disaster recovery. So maybe the customer wants to continue to own and run all of their own equipment at their site, but they're looking for a place where they can replicate to without having to create their own, disaster recovery site. So that's, an additional offering. And then finally, the, hosted, off-site backups is another area where, a number of our value-added resellers and service providers have created offerings where they say, we'll host your backups, at our site, so that you get them, off-site without having to go to tapes and trucks.
Right. Okay. I did notice that you had sort of touched on that a little bit with the.
Yeah.
I guess I know this is another thing that you kind of touched on a little bit, but in some of the use cases section of the presentation. But I'd love it if you could maybe just describe if there are any sort of tried and true combinations of the tools and the services, either with, a combination of Veeam tools that really works, with a particular customer use case, or a combination of Veeam tools and other more standard tools that you find are just like great business models that just tend to work for service providers?
Well, I think from our perspective, with virtualization being a big part of a service provider infrastructure and running things on virtual machines, we've had just tremendous success with our backup offering for service providers. And again, it's all about being able to offer services to customers that they may not be able to get at another service provider, right? The ability to offer that 5-minute recovery time objective, the ability to create sandbox environments or universal application item recovery. These are all things that are very unique to Veeam and help our service providers differentiate themselves from other service providers that don't have those capabilities. And it also creates, again, a menu that a service provider can then create from a pricing perspective to offer these additional services at a different price. And I wouldn't say there's necessarily any real killer combination of Veeam plus other tools, but if you take a look at backup, there's great success there. And then from an infrastructure standpoint, in regards to how do you manage your data center infrastructure? As a service provider, you have a data center, so how do you monitor and manage that from an operational perspective? And that's really where our NWorks line comes in. And specifically, if you're looking at System Center to do that, it does allow you to have that coexistence between VMware hosting as well as Hyper-V hosting.
I actually had a question about that too. I mean, for a service provider who let's say that a hosting provider is providing hosting virtualized environments based on VMware, and they're looking at adding Hyper-V to the mix, and do they face a real a lot of difficulty in terms of having insight into their overall environment if they don't employ something like NWorks or employ some kind of complex reporting and monitoring tool that is capable of handling both those situations? I mean, is there any sort of natural built-in functionality to those things that will make it okay, or are they really in for a hard time?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what you want to put your operational team through. The ones that are in the network operations center, keeping an eye on the screens and the health of the environment. The fewer the consoles, the better, is kind of my view, and the fewer the frameworks, the better as well. The nice thing is that Microsoft, with System Center Operations Manager and the System Center suite in general, really does provide a lot of capabilities for not looking for managing the applications, the operating systems, and then again with our management pack, getting in that VMware data, and then if you are looking to offer Hyper-V hosting, pulling in that Hyper-V information as well. So that's kind of like what we talk about with coexistence is, we really do, through System Center and our management pack, allow you to, System Center is obviously at the center of this, but it does allow you to offer both VMware and Hyper-V, and from an operational perspective, being able to keep an eye on the entire infrastructure from one console, one screen. Okay.
I know you mentioned a little while ago the need for service providers to sort of differentiate yourself, and that's sort of one of to differentiate themselves with just the sort of power of the tools they provide. And I know that you said that was one of the sort of really appealing applications of the Veeam backup stuff with the 5-minute restore and stuff like that. But I know that you're recognized as having a really useful set of tools sort of within the VMware world. Do you find that there's a group of customers out there who are sort of, rather than having the differentiation presented to them by service providers, are out there sort of looking for service providers who are capable of providing them, what Veeam stuff promises? Or specifically looking for service providers who are using Veeam tools?
I'm sure that that there is that we do have that. I think probably the most common thing that a Veeam customer would be looking for in a service provider, an existing Veeam customer, would be looking for in a service provider is what I talked about with hosted disaster recovery. Especially for an SMB customer, They might have a single site. They have critical virtual machines, and they'd like to be able to replicate those to a DR site, to another physical location in the event of a disaster. But they don't have the budget or the capacity to create another data center, somewhere 20 to 200 miles away. So they look to service providers to say, hey, look, I'm a Veeam customer. I want to be able to replicate my critical virtual machines, up to the cloud or up to another site. Is that a service that you offer? So I do think we see some of that.
Okay. Is there a function within your sort of service provider partner program where you can sort of, if a SMB customer comes to you and says, hey, I'm looking for some offsite disaster recovery, are you able to steer them in the direction of some of your service provider partners?
Yes, I believe so. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know where that list is, but I do know that our sales teams, do know how to get access to that information and help them find a service provider that, in their area or within their budget to work with them.
Cool. Well, I don't personally have any more questions that I've written down. I don't know if you guys have any more any more things that you think ought to be addressed, or.
No, there was one question in the Q&A asked about running our vPower functionality, and when running a VM using the backup file, do backups continue to do any changes on the VM machine? So with our instant recovery technology, instant VM recovery, no changes are made to what's stored in the backup file. It is open as read-only, and that also preserves the integrity of the backup file. And once instant recovery is done, backups then can continue as normal.
Okay. Well, after that, having said that, do you want to maybe wrap things up around now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, that was it. That was all I had.
Well, I guess I'll just say that's about it for today. And I'd love to thank everyone for attending, and for those of you who submitted questions. Thank you for that. Of course, I'd like to thank Doug and Rick behind the scenes there for offering some great insight into what I think we can call a subject that's very interesting to service providers today. I would like to remind everyone that this session will be archived along with a lot of other great webinars at theword.com/webinars, and that should be up by early next week. And at the same spot, you can sign up for our next webinar, which is Wednesday, December 7th, and is sponsored by Parallels and entitled Conquering the Cloud: 6 Pitfalls Preventing Scalability and How to Avoid Them.